like, let's say, stranger on the street comes up to you, talks to you about your problems.
Yeah.
Are you supportive or just like, I need to get the hell out of here?
I think I'd be like short-term supportive. I'd
Okay.
be like, oh man, that's terrible. That's you okay? Like, but if they were like, hey, can you like do more for me? Unless it was like clearly an emergency. If they were like bleeding, that's different
Mm.
than like if they're just like, hey man, my girlfriend's like yelling at me. Can you talk to her? I'd be like, what? No, no.
Right, right. Look, I got into a fight with my girlfriend, and I desperately need you. What's your name again? No, and yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like that. I can relate to that. I at like drunken parties. I feel like I'm drunken party supportive.
Yeah.
But if it gets like, this is too much to handle, I'm just gonna leave.
Yeah, exactly though. Exactly.
Welcome, everybody, to Casting for Two, the podcast, as always, hosted by me, yours truly, Chris. Welcome, everybody, to episode number 418's wonderful guest today. Awesome episode. But I gotta bring this up because this is the message of the podcast. Number one, wear a damn mask, all right? If you are going out into the world and you are scared, stay home. But if you do have to go out, whether it's a job or, you need to pick groceries up, stuff like that, wear a mask, be kind and courteous to others, which is the second part of the podcast message. We all share this earth and we should all be kind to one another. All right. Message of the podcast. I went shopping earlier this week and I was scared. Not because I was like, oh no, it's because I never leave the house. So leaving the house, of course, I was masked up because I am a good boy. It was still very weird to be out of the house. So I feel like that is going to be a normal feeling. If you feel the same way, let me know. Twitter and Instagram, both at Casting for Two. But I should talk about my guest. My guest today is a phenomenal person, writer, comedian, producer, all that jazz. Mike Drucker is on the podcast. He is currently the co-head writer and producer on the Samantha Bee show right now, Full Frontal with Samantha Bee. And he just came out with a book not too long ago, earlier in February, from Boss Fight Books about Silent Hill 2, which is a video game that means something to him. And it was so great to have chatted with him because I think he's such a great guy. He also worked on SNL, and I was able to geek out about SNL stories with him, so that made me so happy. But you know what? We got to get in this episode, all right? So everybody sit back, relax, and Mike, take it away.
How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm great, thank you.
Of course. It'd be funny if I was just like, how are you doing? Oh, I'm doing great. Well, that's too bad. Whatever. All right.
I feel like there's people like that. They're like, I'm not doing great, and you're like, oh, I didn't know we were gonna do this.
Oh, we going deep. Oh, okay.
Oh no.
As you can see, this is a loose show where we
Sure.
can talk about anything. But I am very curious. As far as obviously we're all in this predicament called life, and this pandemic that's been going on, and all that crap. You are a little bit in a different situation because you're somebody, and correct me if I'm wrong, you've been working the entire time.
Yeah, I'm very lucky. I
Yeah.
am one of the most lucky people in that I think I had 1 week of job interruption and
Okay.
then kept on working. Yeah.
So when you hear people who, again, not to shit on anybody or disgrace anybody, but who aren't who aren't working, and they're like, "Oh my God, I had so much free time to sleep and to think." Are you just ever like, "Shut up, damn it! I wish."
I think in the first like month of the pandemic, when
Yeah.
when like we thought it would be over in 2 months,
Mm.
when people are like, "Oh man, I got so much done. I finished like a screenplay." My shows, because I mean, most of my friends who are like in TV were like, who had their show put on hold, were like, "Yeah, we're gonna be back in like a couple weeks."
Yeah.
And so in my head, I was like, "Oh man, they got like a vacation, and everyone's on vacation, so I don't have." Like it's the perfect time. And then when it kept going and my friends kept not having jobs, I was like, oh no, I'm lucky. I'm lucky
Yeah.
that I kept working. So it's the reverse now.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah, no. And it's just so funny because a lot of people that I've chatted with definitely are on that spectrum of, it's great I got to explore, or I'm bored as hell, just something like that. And
Right.
I totally relate. And I'm glad that, there have been forms of entertainment still been able to continue on. And,
Yeah,
as far as, because for the people at home, because you work on you're a co-head writer of Samantha Bee.
that's right.
Considering how this year has been, is it hard to, like, look, I don't know if we can make this entertaining because of the year that this has been, or is it just like I got nothing, I don't know my end to make this entertaining, or is it just, what, let's just go informative.
I think, I mean, obviously we're a bit lucky in that we are a political talk show.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's a little easier for us to be like, hey, let's talk about this super depressing topic than, a lot of other late night shows. So it was never really like, can we do the show, or, what are we going to do? It was really more like how do we make this so it's not just overwhelming?
Right.
Because especially when COVID started, we were doing week after week after week about COVID, whether it was how, essential workers are being affected, or how, COVID was disproportionately affecting people of color. And, when you're limited by what topics you can talk about, when it's COVID, police violence, Trump, COVID, police violence, Trump, that does begin to get a bit hard because you're like, you're trying to both find new areas of the story to talk about, but also like, it's so depressing that there's a point when it's almost like, it's not impossible to make jokes, but it's very much like we're trying as hard as we can to pivot away from the sadness to make a joke, then get back to the sadness.
Right.
Now that Trump's out of office and now that we have vaccines coming, it's much nicer. The one thing you always hear when you do late night writing is like, oh, you must be upset that Trump's gone because you don't have anything to talk about. It's like, no, we can actually talk about more,
right?
Because we don't have this dude who's like going crazy. You know what I mean? Like we did an episode, tonight's episode that we're doing, or tomorrow night's episode, I should say, that we're doing is about the $15 minimum wage, which is something we've wanted to talk about for a while. But, when Trump blows up Mount Rushmore, we have to talk about that instead of talking about something we want to talk about. So
right.
We're coming out of a dark tunnel, I think, as a show.
Yes. Now you can actually report on things that are, you guys feel passionate about that maybe don't have as much light shined on them.
Exactly.
Okay. Yes. And it is nice to not have to think or see, that person, that individual.
It's great. It is. Yeah. It is great to not have to be like, what do we say?
Do you, and this is a personal question. Do you think he's just going to like disappear, or will we see him later on, the next election race? Or
I think, I don't think we'll see him disappear. I think he's still figuring out how to reappear. I don't think, the weird thing, the thing is, I think he liked the idea of being president. I think he liked that he was president. I don't think he ever liked doing the job of being president. So I think he's probably torn between like wanting to get that back and be like, I'm the real winner. Look at me. I actually, not even the fake election stuff, like being like, see, I ultimately did win. I'm the winner. but also the part of him that's like, I hate that job and don't want to do it. I just want people to like me.
They make me do stuff. I don't like it.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if you looked at the last few weeks of his presidency, there were so many schedulings that just said like he will take many calls and have many meetings, and you're like, oh, he's over it.
Yeah, no, and and there was this sense in the air of, especially with 2021 in general, that oh yeah, everything's all fixed, everything's fine, and we're gonna go on, and the past 4 years have never happened, and it's just like, well, we got to ramp up to it.
Yeah.
But I just think we're baby steps, and hopefully it'll be okay.
I think over a long span of time it'll be okay.
Exactly. Yeah, there we go. And I'm excited I finally have somebody to talk. And I'm not saying that you're super political or into politics, but obviously, you write for a political show, so it's nice to actually be able to talk to somebody about these things.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
For the longest time on the podcast, I was very much, no religion talk, no politics, because I didn't want to anger anybody.
Right.
And 2020 was just kind of a year of, no, I can do whatever I want, and I can say whatever I want. And if people don't like it, then there's other podcasts.
Right.
They can go listen to. I don't know. I don't know who's hip and now, but I don't know. But they can go. They can go off.
Of course.
But I'd like to go back to your past, because I'm very curious. As somebody who got your start in the video game industry, quote unquote. What was it about comedy that it was like, man, that's what I want to do?
Well, it's weird, because as a kid, I really wanted to get into video games. My dream was to make video games, but I really liked comedy. Like, I liked Weird Al. I liked stand-up. It was just almost like, and I think as a kid, like, just the same as you have a fantasy about playing in the NBA or whatever, I was like, oh, that'd be cool to be a comedian. But I never thought it was like an actual job. Right. To me, the pie in the sky job was video games. So I, when I was in high school, I took computer programming classes, and I was really bad at it. Just extremely bad at it. In fact, this year I've been taking computer programming classes again, because I keep telling myself I want to learn. Yeah. And I'm still bad at it. It is something that I should be, by any metric, very good at. I am awful at programming. And so, and the thing is, I didn't recognize that there are other ways to get into gaming, whether it's through art or through, design choices that didn't necessarily involve heavy programming. I didn't know any of that. So I went to college, and I figured I was going to get into something involving books, whether it was writing books, or I also went for journalism. I knew I wanted to write in some way or be near writers. And so I went to college for journalism and English lit. And then there I started doing stand-up, and I started to actually like do pretty well with stand-up after a couple years. And I landed a job at SNL as a research assistant. So I was doing like research for them, but at the same time, they let me pitch to Weekend Update, which after a year or two, I finally started to get a lot of jokes in.
Yeah. Okay.
And so I was still a researcher making, couple hundred a week. And I was like, hey, I'm getting a lot of jokes in. Can I become a writer? And they were like, that's not how this works. And I was like, okay. And so I happened to, a friend of mine who used to be a comedian went to Nintendo, and he was like, hey, they're looking for comedy people to do some localization writing over here. And that was like, I was disappointed that I wasn't going to get hired as a writer on this one show I was working at. And then there was like, my childhood favorite company offering me a job. So I went over to Nintendo, and I worked there 2 years as a localization writer editor, which was an amazing thing. I will say that Nintendo is maybe the best company I've ever worked for in terms of like quality. So I always say that because I feel like tech companies, and especially video game companies, have a well-earned bad reputation for being mean to employees, for firing people, for being cheap. And Nintendo is, in my experience at least, the opposite of all that. However, my job was basically helping a translator translate someone else's writing to make more sense in English, and sometimes like changing up jokes when they didn't make sense.
Okay. Yeah.
So it wasn't super creative. So I was still doing stand-up. I got an opportunity to write comedy for a website that paid a lot more. So I moved to San Francisco, worked for a website for a year. And during that time is when I finally got Fallon. And then I moved back to New York and became a writer at Fallon. And from there, I have now been a comedy writer.
And it's funny because, I mean, to I don't know what I'm trying to say. I am a Greg Miller fan. He's been on the show plenty of times.
Yeah.
Kind of funny best friend. So when I saw you were on the podcast, I was like, oh my gosh, wait, it was the same guy, and I was blown away. And it was nice to see, that, like me, I'm a fan of comedy. I grew up watching, Three Stooges and stuff like that. And writing was always something that I'm not a writer,
right?
But I could say funny stuff. That's where I've kind of based it. But then when I was looking into your history and just everything, I was just like, wow, I'm super motivated by your story of going and just being like, I want to do comedy writing and I want to do work on, these shows that are impactful not only towards entertainment, but also, I mean, culturally.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. But I gotta ask you.
Yeah.
Who was around on SNL? What years was this?
I was an intern 2005 through 2006 or 7, and then I was an employee from 2000 maybe 8 to 2010, I want to say.
Okay.
But I was there sort of the Andy Samberg, Bill Hader, Kristen Wiig era, Jason Sudeikis. Like my first year as an intern was the first year that Andy, Kristen, Jason, and Bill started. So I was in an amazing year to be in.
Oh my God. Everybody has their preferred SNL seasons.
Yeah.
And that group, that chunk was always just resonated with me very well. And like, I love Hader and Sudeikis and like everybody that came through there. And I'm still an avid SNL watcher. And, I look at the cast and I'm just like, I still enjoy what they're doing. And of course, Kate McKinnon's still there. And Keenan, of course. But then I'm just like, man, remember like Dick in a Box? Remember?
Yeah.
Bill Hader did a sketch on like the like a firefighter where he's just screaming and going crazy.
Yep.
And I'm just like, oh man, I like those are the episodes that are just still fresh in my head after all these years.
Oh, it's such a fun era. Like Will Forte might be the funniest person I've ever met. Like Will Forte he would constantly have sketches at the read-through table that didn't make it into the show, but it was because they were so insane that it was like, no, we can't do this, but it would be so much fun.
Well, now, was Will Forte, like, I feel like his voice alone, is just funny when he goes into like the Will Forte high-pitched MacGruber kind of voice. What are there people on that show that just aren't aware of how funny they are from from your opinion that you saw?
You mean like people who like don't think that they're as funny? I think like honestly, like a Bobby Moynihan is super funny, but he's the world's nicest dude. But I think that like when you talk to him, because he's like a regular Joe. So I think for him, he's like, I didn't deserve to be there. I didn't do anything. And you're like, no, you were there a long time and you did great. He's such a nice dude that I think that he has trouble seeing himself as being like the best, but he was so good there.
Bobby Moynihan is so good at being the confident loser.
Yeah.
And I was telling my girlfriend, like, that is a character I would love to play. Just you see somebody who's obviously just, not to be mean, but just a sack of shit. But he's like, yeah, I'm the coolest though.
Yeah.
Like, I'm awesome. I live at home with my parents, I eat Lunchables. What's up? And it's just, oh man, I love that mentality. And just the fun that you can have with somebody like that.
Absolutely. And he was such a nice dude. He always, like, every day that he was there, and this sounds like a cliche, but it's not, because people get jaded, people get annoyed. but he genuinely, the whole time he was there, had the energy of someone who won the chance to do it in a contest and he didn't understand or like had fooled everybody. And he was so happy to be there. He's honestly such a great dude.
Nice. Well, I'm glad because he always, he always looked like a great dude. And I'm glad to hear that. And confirmation. Boom. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then, you came out with a book. Boss Fight Books put out this book about Silent Hill 2, or you wrote a book about Silent Hill 2.
Yeah.
Was this kind of a full circle moment for you? Being like, hey, I started out, working in a video game company. I've lived a life. I've seen some shit and experienced some good shit. And now I'm writing a book about, a video game that you love.
It feels full circle, but even more so in that I got my master's in English lit. Just because my college had a thing where they were like, if you stay an extra year, we'll just let you get a master's degree.
Okay.
And I was like, okay. So weirdly, it doesn't feel like my days back to my video game days. It feels almost more like I'm like, oh, this is the first time I've used this master's degree since I wrote a master. Because it really is sort of like a master's thesis on a game.
Yeah.
So honestly, more than even my career, it felt more like, oh, I'm using my education for this.
See, it was worth it, parents.
It was worth it. It was worth it, me, for $40,000.
And then you're just crying.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because just thinking about Resident Evil 2, I never played the game, but games in that time, they were... I don't want to say they were all very similar, but there is a similar essence to them, whether it was Silent Hill 2...
Yeah.
I believe it was like Code Veronica, Resident Evil.
Yeah.
Even what was it, like Dino Crisis or
Dino Crisis, Clock Tower.
Yeah, they all had this similar feel. And I was thinking about this earlier, like that's where horror games were at that point in time.
Yeah.
And I think it must be nice to just, in your case, just like look back and like, oh, that's where video games were, and that's where culturally that's where we were.
Absolutely. It's very interesting going back to play them, especially because now in the indie scene there's been a resurgence of sort of like PlayStation 1-esque graphics for horror games. I think the same reason that like, in the 2000s that VHS tape aesthetic took over for horror films, where like something that's like something from our childhood that's like innocuous can be made creepy kind of. And so what's fun is that I think that era, the PS1, PS2 games, as we moved on to like, Xbox 360 and whatnot, we sort of saw those games as passe or graphically lame or not that scary. But now because they're so far in the past and we've had that time to let those graphics sort of sit, they've become creepy again. So the games actually carry sort of a scariness that they haven't had for a long time, which is really fun.
Right. And part of that was also the controls. I mean, I don't know how Silent Hill operated, but the whole idea of, okay, if you want to move, you got to hold up. And if you got to turn, you got to stop. You got to turn. And, oh, there's somebody chasing after you.
Yeah.
I remember that was the most frustrating thing about Resident Evil at the time, just because I was like, I want to get the hell out of here. But nope. There's somebody attacking you. And, and it made sense for like the zombies to be slow and it's just, oh, wow. Versus now, it's all fast. And
yeah.
But yeah, what do you think is going to be the next kind of creepy aesthetic adopted from the past?
That's a great question. I mean, we've seen like horror games take the pixel art thing and use that. We've seen like PlayStation 1, Nintendo 64 graphics. I'm not sure what era comes next. Because I feel like the Xbox 360, Xbox One Series X have sort of been somewhat continuous. Like, you look at an Xbox 360 game and you're not like, that looks way worse. You're like, oh, that looks, you know what I mean?
Right.
I'm actually not sure. And I'm fascinated to find out, like, if they start, if they find a way to start mimicking, like, games from like the 360 or PlayStation 3, and that's the way they go, that would be fascinating to me.
And it's so great that, I mean, as far as like gameplay mechanics, sure, but I never really understood why people give such a hard time towards graphics in general.
Yeah.
Because I'm just like, look where how far we've come. You remember Tetris? You remember Super Mario Brothers? Now you have this. Like, why are you bitching that it doesn't look real? Like, there's a movie devoted where cars turn into robots, and you're like, oh, that looks fake. Of course it's fake. What are you talking about? But it looks good. It's like, come on, it's graphics. Why are we bitching about the graphics?
I agree, especially for horror games where you don't necessarily need like amazing graphics, because that can at times be distracting, you know? Which is why games like, you know, if you look at the Amnesia series, they just released a new game, and the graphics are fine. They're serviceable, but they're not amazing. But the game really, you know, uses a lack of light and a lack of graphics to really drive the energy of the game, the sort of emotional feeling of it. And I don't know. I agree with you. At times, the focus on graphics isn't necessarily beneficial to the game itself.
Yeah, no, I think it's, you know, purely gameplay, and if you can nail that, then yeah, sure. I guess story too. I'm so bad with stories in video games, though. I don't remember any of them.
Yeah.
My buddy and I were playing through the entire Halo series, and I was just, what are we doing? We're shooting. Got it. And
right.
That's all I needed to know. But yeah, I was just like, I don't understand what's going on.
Yeah. I love story in games. I love story in games, but also I'm like also the person who's like, I'm going to play it on easy because I just want to see what happens. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like very,
There's nothing wrong with playing a game on easy, especially if you just want to take it in.
Oh yeah.
I you know, what was it? The Jedi Fallen Order game. So many people, when that game came out, so many of my friends were just like, oh man, it's glitchy, it's blah 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 blah. Well, what are you playing it on? Extreme mega hard. I'm like, why play it on easy? At least you get the story, and then you're not complaining, and then they'll come out with a patch, and then you'll be okay.
Exactly. That's how, like, I played through Jedi Fallen Order like that, or Final Fantasy VII Remake. And it's not because I wouldn't have beat them ananyway, but I'm like, I don't want to spend 60 hours playing a 30-hour game so I can get good at something I'll never play again.
Right. And, you know, if there is that time, that period that comes where you're like, you know what, I want to enjoy that again, maybe bump it up to medium, you know? It's like,
right.
Has there been a recent video game that came out that story-wise just totally blew you away?
I really, really did like the Final Fantasy VII Remake story, just because I did not expect it to go the way it did. Like, as it was going that way, I was like, oh no, this is great. Like, I was so happy that it wasn't just a like, I think we all knew that it wasn't supposed to be a very straightforward remake.
Yeah.
The fact that they were like, oh no, everything's different from now on. It was like, oh wow, you guys like really did something with that. I really like that story. There's another, I've been playing Dragon Quest XI, which is not really a new game, but that game is so nice and so happy. And that story is like, so like it's nice and happy without being cheesy. And that's so hard to pull off.
Man, I've never, I both those games, I'm glad you enjoyed them. I've never played a Final Fantasy. I've never played a Dragon Quest, but the amount of hype that I hear about those games, I do always think, maybe this year.
Yeah.
Maybe this year's the day, and then Halo will come out and be like, okay, I'm good.
That's how I am with games like Destiny. Where like I've played, because every console, every service I have is always like, here's Destiny 2 for free. And I'm like, all right, I'll play it for an hour. And I know that if I really dedicated time and like grouped with my friends, I would love it. But I also know I'm never going to do that.
Right. Oh my. And it's Destiny in particular is one of those games that people get so involved in.
Right.
And they're like, we got to raid. I'm like, what's that? That's where you do these things and you got to time it perfectly. And if you mess up, we're all going to hate you and we're going to unfriend you.
Right. How long will it take? 3 hours on a Tuesday? Nope. Yeah. I'm not going to do that. Nope.
Okay. Well, we can do 12 hours on a Sunday. How does that sound?
Still nope. I am an adult man. I cannot do that.
And yeah, I'm with you. I'm like, cool. Have fun playing.
I do respect why it's fun, and I get why it's fun, but I also get that, like, I would be like, guys, I'm not going to do this with you anymore.
Right. Well, and then, you also do have a job. So that's...
I also have a job. Yeah.
Yeah. When do you find your gaming time?
Usually I find my gaming time either when I first wake up, like if I want to get like an hour in before I start to get to work, or later at night. Usually during the day, even when I have downtime, I'm sort of like half paying attention to Slack and to the news.
Yeah.
So, I might play something like if I want to kill like 5 minutes, I might play something like Smash. But in terms of like a sit down gaming session, either early in the morning or late at night.
Gotcha. Okay. Um, and earlier in our chat, we were talking about how, or you mentioned that you did stand up, or you tried stand. Well, did you do you still do stand up? Is that something that you did for years? What's the?
I did stand up for a long time, and I still, I think, ostensibly do. However, I've only done like a handful of Zoom shows.
Okay.
I really like doing stand up. It was never the main source of my income. I have a lot of friends who like need to do stand up, and they like, and not just need to creatively, like this is, 2/3 or even 3/3 of their income. Whereas for me, stand up was something I did, and I toured for a while, but then I started to get TV work, and that's really where my creativity felt more satisfied.
Yeah.
So I miss performing. I miss going on the road. However, for me, it's like, oh, when it comes back, I'll enjoy that. It's less than me being like desperate or anxious, because I do have a creative outlet.
Yeah, it's almost just like a fun, I guess life experience for you.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm certainly, I would not be where I am if I didn't do it. So I'm certainly grateful for it.
One question that I love to ask people who do what they do, in your case, with stand-up comedy, was there ever a bad show that just still stings to this day?
Oh yeah, definitely. I once did this show that usually was great. I'd done it a ton of times. It was like at the bottom of this nice restaurant. Usually it was packed. And like every time I'd done it in the past, it was at worst good and at best amazing. And so I had just started dating someone, and I was like, hey, and she had been like, can I come to a show? And I'm very nervous about ever having someone see me perform that I know like well. Like I'm always nervous having someone I'm dating or family members. And it has nothing to do with what I'm talking about. I just, it's easier for me to feel comfortable knowing that whether I fail or succeed, these strangers will never see me again than being like, but she had been asking me, and I was like, okay, this is the show. This show always goes well. She'll get a free meal out of it because I'll get a free meal and I'll just give her that meal ticket. And so this is like, and the thing was, she was very supportive. It wasn't like, this'll prove it to her. Like she really wanted to support me.
Yeah.
And we do the show like, for some reason, even though it's a fine day out, no rain or anything, it's almost empty. The first two people get nothing. And in the middle of mine, a guy just starts talking to his wife or girlfriend or friend or whoever.
Naturally,
and and it's loud. And I was like, hey, we can hear you talking. And he's like, I don't care. I don't like this. And I was like, oh man. And the thing was like, it was almost like a type of heckle that there's no response to. Because if someone's like, you suck, you can directly respond to, but someone like, I'm not having fun at all. You're like, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. And so it wasn't intense, but I clearly spun out for like 15 minutes of not knowing what to do. Yeah. And it was so embarrassing. And it felt like, and this was like well into years into doing comedy. This felt like just one of those instances where any of your professional instincts immediately leave your mind, and you're like, you panic.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think about that.
Oh my. And do you think that is a motivator in your comedy writing to today?
Of course. Yeah. You definitely like, you want to learn from past mistakes, and you want to get better. You don't want to like, or, you want to be able to be prepared for situations in which people aren't having fun. You just want to be more on your toes.
Yeah. Yeah. So had, today the gentleman in the restaurant said, I'm not having any fun, do you know what you would have said back?
No, I still don't know. It haunts me. It haunts me.
When you figure that out, that is the day when you're done writing.
That's like, the day.
I've reached the pinnacle. I know my comeback.
Right. Exactly, though.
And then you just ascend to the heavens.
Yep. Right on up.
There you go. For people at home who would like to follow you online, check out the work you do, and also, more importantly, pick up the book, where can they do all that?
Great. You can follow me on Twitter at Mike Drucker, MikeDrucker. On Instagram at Mike Drucker is dead, because the regular one was taken. And please watch Full Frontal with Samantha Bee, Wednesdays 10:30 on TBS. And you can get my book Silent Hill 2. You can get it on Kindle from Amazon, or you can buy a physical copy from the publisher's website, bossfightbooks.com.
Go. And I'm just curious, I know you just came out with a book, and there's always just, what's your next project? But are you actively looking for something to do, or are you just kind of, if the idea hits me, then I'll write it. But right now you're just kind of chilling and doing your work.
I wrote, I'm working on a new cartoon sample script, and me and a couple friends are trying to shop around to different shows. So we'll see. Pitching's always hit or miss, but we're trying.
Yeah. I feel, I really enjoyed this chat, and B, I got to have you back and we can talk all about pitches.
Yeah.
I think pitching, people don't know pitching.
No.
And I'm in that group included, just of successful worst pitches. And I know other people would like to hear that as well. So
absolutely in.
Awesome. Mike, I'll let you go and relax, but thank you for stopping by. Continued safe and healthy times.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, anytime you want to come back, just say the word.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you, but have a good rest of your night.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.